For justice, for doing the right thing for America. We've recognized him previously as our freedom hero at Freedom Law School. Please help me give him a warm hand of welcome to Ted Gunderson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That and $1.65 will get you a good cup of coffee at Starbucks, okay? Actually, I had quite an illustrious career, 27 and a half years in the FBI. And in those 27 and a half years, I had 13 assignments, so I moved around the country. The only part of the country I never did live in was really the extreme northeast U.S. So also during my career, I handled just about everything. I was counter-espionage, counter-terrorism in New York and Connecticut, and I negotiated with some skyjackers at Philadelphia International Airport for 2.5 hours, July the 12th, 1972. And I ended up being in charge of most of Southern California. Had over 700 personnel under my command. I went out, left, retired, had over 600 people at my retirement party. Former Governor Jerry Brown, Gray Davis was there, Pat Brown was there, Louis L'Amour was there. It really read like who's who. I was quite flattered. But I had no idea what awaited me after I retired. I was asked by Attorney General Griffin Bell to coordinate security for the Pan American Games. Right after I retired, I did proceed to San Juan, Puerto Rico, the summer '79, coordinated it. There were some problems there. We didn't have one act of terrorism. I was patting myself on the back thinking, you did a great job, Gunderson, but I found out later they were fantastic sports fans. And they didn't want to interrupt some of their sports activities. That's the true story. But I still think I did a pretty good job. Came back. I was a consultant on the '84 LA Olympics and opened my own firm in Westwood, California. My first major case was the Dr. Jeffrey R. McDonald case. It's spelled M-A-C-D-O-N-A-L-D. There's been a best-selling book, a movie on NBC. It reruns every time we are going to have some sort of a court proceedings. He's a former Green Beret doctor who was convicted of murdering his wife, 2 children. The murders occurred February 17, 1970 at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I was contacted by some of his doctor friends. He had just been convicted in August of 1979 and asked to investigate the case. I immediately proceeded to Terminal Island, San Pedro, California, interviewed the doctor, and I told him, I said, Doctor, if you are guilty of this horrible crime, these horrible crimes, I'm not going to work for you or with you, but if you are innocent, I will be with you as long as possible until we get you out and make a free man out of you. Believe it or not, the man is still in prison. He was convicted and sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. He did not commit the crimes. I entered the case, spent unfortunately about $75,000 traveling around the country interviewing witnesses, et cetera, et cetera. I have about 2,000 hours in the case free. I didn't charge him or ran out of money. I'm still working for him. But the first thing you do in an investigation of this type is you read everything you can get your hands on. Testimony, look at the evidence, and you go from there. Long story short, I developed 19 new witnesses, including a signed confession from Helena Stokely, the girl in the floppy hat on the street corner at 4:30 in the morning, observed by MP Micah en route to the crime scene. This case is, other than the O.J. Simpson case, I'd say has probably had more publicity, not in recent years, but in the past than any other case in the history of our country in the way of a criminal matter. In my confession, which I obtained on October 25, 1980, Helena Stokely told me that Dr. McDonald did not commit those murders. Now, I'm going to give you some details here, and I'm going to move into some other areas because I'm talking about corruption personified, okay? Helena said he did not commit those murders. They were committed by her satanic cult group. She said that her satanic cult was involved in distributing drugs up and down the East Coast. Drugs were being flown in plastic bags in the body cavities of the dead GIs coming into the air bases around the country. This is in Time magazine, January 1, 1973. You want documentation, I'll give it to you. And she said that they went in on their own, committed the murders. They were mad at McDonald, Dr. McDonald, because when their associates and friends would go to the civilian hospital where he was moonlighting, he was actually a doctor at the military hospital, he was being abusive to the ODs, those who were on overdose of drugs and so forth, and so they went in to rough him up a little bit. It got out of hand, and it was a horrible thing. Colette, the wife, was pregnant. The two children, 2.5 and 5.5, were brutally stabbed numerous times, over 100 stab wounds in the 3 bodies. But Helena said that when the higher-ups in the drug operation, who were government personnel, police officers, 2 attorneys in Fayetteville, North Carolina, generals, not singular, generals, top brass military officers, when they learned that this cult, this satanic cult, had committed these murders, they knew that if there was an investigation of the cult, it would expose the whole operation throughout America. And so what did they do? They covered it up. And I submitted a 1,200-page report to Judge Webster, who was my boss at one time. I was one of the top executives in the Bureau. And the judge knew me personally. In fact, he told Louis L'Amour, a Western writer, who was a friend of mine, according to Louis, that I was probably one of the best all-around agents in the history of the organization. That's what Louis L'Amour told me. But I knew Judge Webster. I knew him well, worked with him, in contact with him personally. And I submitted this 1,200-page report to him with a personal letter. Judge, I think this man's innocent. The FBI needs to look at my report and continue with my investigation. He's run out of money. Instead of a response from the FBI, I didn't even receive an acknowledgement, by the way. Next thing I hear, I'm receiving phone calls from around the country. I'm a homosexual, suffering from mental problems, a disgruntled ex-employee, was forced out of the FBI because I was a practicing Satanist, an informant for the FBI, an informant for the CIA, and it goes on and on and on. There's one person in particular right now who's spreading these rumors quite vociferously and quite rapidly, and unfortunately there's a few people who do believe, but I just keep going forward. It's not a problem for me. So I was ignored. And I was amazed and astounded in reviewing the testimony. 2 FBI agents lied on the witness stand. Paul Stombaugh, for one, and another gentleman, I say gentleman, another Fred Whitehurst, who was the good guy, who tried to expose corruption within the FBI laboratory, has been kicked out and pressured out of the Bureau. Another FBI agent lied. That's come out in laboratory reports recently. And so I was, in my day, we had a great organization, not because of me, but because of a lot of good, solid, great Americans. As a matter of fact, when Mr. Hoover died, which was May of 1972, he'd been in 40 years, director. You know what he had on those congressmen, senators, don't you? We didn't have the corruption then that we do now, I'm convinced, because Hoover knew. He knew. He had the evidence. And that's another point. I'm not going to get into that. But Congress voted that there would never be another J. Edgar Hoover. He had too much power. And he may have had too much power. So they limited the term of a director to 10 years. They also voted mandatory retirement at age 55. So what does that mean? They got rid of all the, quote, Hooverites, all the good guys, as far as I'm concerned. And look what's happened in the last 23 years. A disgrace. I personally investigated the Oklahoma City bombing case. Huge cover-up. Jack Kennedy's assassination, huge cover-up. Bobby Kennedy's assassination, huge cover-up. World Trade Center, huge cover-up. Okay. Terrorism. They're using it as an excuse to take away our constitutional rights and our civil liberties. the Bilderbergs,